Christians oblivious to the greatest prophetic event in recent history? Here's a little quiz. This is the 2023 UN Summit. This is the Bible's white horseman from Revelation 6 holding his rainbow bow. Similar? This is the UN symbol with a wreath-shaped crown. This is the white horseman wearing a wreath-shaped crown. Similar? This is the UN agenda for peace and security. This is the color of the white horseman's horse. See the similarity? Rainbow, wreath, white. Today we're following up on a recent video that discussed the prophetic implications of the United Nations and the white horseman, but today, instead, we're focusing on the two UN summits, one later this month and one next year. And when both are completed, will we have seen a signed covenant with the many from Daniel 9? Will the tribulation have begun? And will Christians have been oblivious to it all until it's too late? That's what we're thinking may happen. And when we're done today, I think you may agree that this would be the greatest prophetic event in a long, long time if it happens. So in this video, we're concentrating on the 2023 Sustainable Development Goals Summit coming up in 2 weeks, like only 2 weeks. The summit with the rainbow symbolism. There are a lot of prophetic teachers out there on YouTube that are saying this summit might mark the beginning of the tribulation. So naturally, we need to address this on this channel. I mean, the start of a tribulation is really a big deal. And that's why you're part of this community, to get cutting-edge analysis of prophecy that doesn't look at how things appear on the surface, but digs deeper into the Bible to find the true meaning. And if you're not a member of this community but want to be part of one of the more informed groups of Christians on YouTube, think about subscribing. Now, we're looking at this because Jesus instructed us to watch, to keep our eyes open for events detailed in Scripture. And this could be one of the most important events in our lifetimes. What we're watching for is something called the covenant with the many. Likely a peace covenant that begins the 70th week of Daniel. Look at how Daniel the prophet describes this. And he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week. Daniel 9:27. If this is what we're watching for, let's do a quick analysis. First, the covenant with the many is for 1, quote, week, end of quote. And it launches the tribulation or 70th week of Daniel. The week Daniel is speaking of isn't a week of days, it's a week of years or 7 years. Hebrew secular years start and end on Rosh Hashanah, or what the Bible calls Yom Teruah, the Feast of Blowing of Trumpets. All weeks of years start on this date. So the tribulation will start on a future Rosh Hashanah. And the UN has scheduled these two earth-shaking summits we're talking about today, one in 2023 and one in 2024, to coincide with Israel's high holy days, specifically Rosh Hashanah. So one of these two summits may be the start of that infamous 70th week or the tribulation. Certainly, they have scheduled them on the right day. Second, the English translation says he makes the covenant, a strong covenant with the many. And I'm sorry, but we have to get a little bit nerdy right here. Just for a second, because this is important, very important, and every once in a while, you have to get nerdy. The Hebrew verb translated make in the English is actually gabar, which does not mean make, confirm, or anything like that. It doesn't mean making a covenant. In fact, it's in the hifel form of the verb. I told you this was going to get nerdy. And this form of the verb means to overpower. So, he overpowers the many with a covenant. It's forced upon the many. He doesn't just make it or confirm it. So do we think the tribulation starts in 2 weeks? I mean, that's a huge question. There's going to be one of these summits in 2 weeks. There was a time just a few years ago when I thought 2023 might be the year, but I've changed my mind. Of course, I could be wrong, and that's why we're looking into this in detail today so you can make up your own mind. But the UN summit happening in 2 weeks isn't planning an overpowering covenant. It isn't planning to force it on people. We think it's a setup for the summit that's coming in 2024. This one in 2023 may result in the signing of a preliminary version of the covenant with the many that is going to be strengthened later on next year. And it gets some of the issues agreed to ahead of time before that very significant covenant. You also saw that there is a he who overpowers the many with a covenant. Should we be keeping our eyes open right now for such a he? Oh, yes, we should. Daniel 9:27 tells us this is the prince who is to come. Now, this is way too complex a subject for this video, but there are two possibilities on who the he is. Either it's Jesus, who empowers his followers for the 70th week of Daniel, or it's the Antichrist, who overpowers the world with a covenant. And we're looking at that second possibility in this video. But in the future, after this UN summit is over, we'll do another video on this topic to fill you in on both possibilities, but you're going to have to wait for that one. So in 2023, we're looking for a preliminary covenant that will be strengthened into an overpowering covenant in 2024. And maybe, just maybe, the Antichrist will be behind the scenes causing both of them. Here is how the UN describes the 2023 summit. Quote, the 2023 SDG Summit will take place on the 18th and 19th of September 2023 in New York. It will mark the beginning of a new phase of accelerated progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals, leading up to 2030. Yes, the same year. The popular video Messiah 2030 discusses as a year for the return of Jesus. So we have two things now pointing to this year, or next year being the year the tribulation begins, and the UN is planning to accelerate what they have already been doing. Expect more big, difficult things to happen in the next year to get the nations to want that overpowering covenant. Listen to this statement by the UN as well. Quote, the summit will mark the halfway point to the deadline set for achieving the 2030 agenda. Sustainable development cannot be realized without peace and security. I'm sure those words, peace and security, catch your biblically attuned ears just as they did mine. The Apostle Paul spoke of them in 1 Thessalonians 5:3. While people are saying, there is peace and security, then sudden destruction shall come upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman. So when the unrepentant and unsaved of the world say peace and security, it marks a period that leads to the end. The UN's 2024 Pact for the Future will include something called the Agenda for Peace, where the UN will acquire a lot of new powers, overpowering powers, to force their form of peace on the people and nations of the world. The Pact for the Future will allow the UN to assume emergency powers over all the nations of the world in the event that any of these things happen. Quote, the great power tensions intensified by Russia's aggression toward Ukraine increase. Runaway climate change, unconstrained artificial intelligence, and 4, a growing global trust deficit, unquote. Once passed, this would give the UN unilateral power, stressing the word power, to take power, again stressing power, an overpowering covenant. That simply isn't something they have scheduled to happen in 2023. But 2023 is the aspect that adds the rainbow to the mix, something that I didn't recognize personally until the UN began promoting their 2023 summit, and I saw this picture. The UN rainbow is representative of all their sustainable development goals. And this 2023 covenant is all about that, the goals that the 2024 conference will strengthen or gabar. This fits with prophecy as we discussed in the previous video. All the symbols of the white horse rider of Revelation 6, 1-2 match the UN and this upcoming covenant with the many. Most prophecy teachers view the white horse as the events that launch the tribulation. We do as well, just as they do with the covenant with the many. Us too. So our channel began exploring the idea. Are the white horse rider and the covenant with the many the same event? Is the white horse rider symbolic of that covenant? The United Nations is the link that made me think that they are. The UN appears to be included in both. As we discussed at the beginning of the video, the white horse rider has 4 main symbols. It rides a white horse, which is a symbol of peace, a peace covenant. It wears a crown that's wreath-shaped. The Greek word for this type of crown is Stephanos. The UN logo obviously has this type of crown in it, and it represents peace. The white horse rider goes out conquering and to conquer. The UN plans to overpower the nations, but not through war, but through a peace covenant. Then we come to the rainbow. As we discussed in this previous video, the rider carries a bow, but without arrows, another symbol of peace. The lack of arrows designates peace. And specifically, this type of bow is a rainbow in the Bible. Genesis 9:13, after Noah's flood, God laid his battle bow down in the sky and promised to not destroy the world again with water, the original peace covenant. That bow, of course, was a rainbow in the sky. The same symbol the UN has now adopted for the 2023 summit. So all 4 symbols of the white horseman match the UN and their proposed plans for the next 2 years. Now, this white horseman is only the first of 4 horsemen, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You've probably heard about them. And their colors tell us a whole lot. And now we know that white means peace. It tells us the order of events that are going to happen in the beginning of a tribulation. White, peace comes first. Red, bloodshed and war comes second. 3, black, economic distress and collapse. And 4, green, pestilence and death. So that's the order that things are going to happen in the next couple of years as these horsemen begin to ride out. Peace first, war second, economic collapse third, pestilence and death fourth. So these are just some things to keep in mind as you're beginning to interpret prophecy for yourself in your own mind. Peace first, war second, economic collapse third, pestilence and death fourth. Now, if you're liking this analysis, hit the like button. We don't need affirmation, but hitting the like button tells the powers that be to push this video out to thousands of more Christians who need this information. And hitting the subscribe button is even a stronger indication to the powers that be that this is a video to promote. And our idea is that 2023 is not the beginning of a tribulation. Rather, it's putting the ball on the tee so that 2024 can hit the ball down the fairway and start the tribulation. Now, a big part of this covenant with the many is going to be Israel's dividing of the land in a 2-state solution. And the globalists are hard at work to make this part of their covenant with the many as well. And they're using Saudi Arabia to negotiate this right now, undercover, stealthily. Click right here to keep watching to discover the hidden negotiations that are happening right now and will likely be tied to this 2024 covenant. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there as history unfolds before our eyes.